Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here in the United States of America, uh, bringing you tonight a fantastic interview with a man who I believe showed the entire world, let alone Canada and the United States, uh, a lot of bravery, a lot of patience, and brought a lot of pride and honor to his country in Canada. I would hope that the communist government leaders over there in Trudeau's government in Canada, or at least some of you are watching, you're going to get a lesson on what a real man is, what a real person who loves freedom and liberty is. The mainstream media in Canada, I'm sure, as well as in the United States, do not give true American and Canadian patriots the opportunities and the time they need to explain their side of a story. It's always the government side. It's always their side. Well, what we've learned in America, folks, is that we are now the news. Mainstream media ratings are dipping at an all-time level here in the United States, as I'm sure in Canada. More people are watching their news feeds over the internet. And when I say we are the news, I'm not talking about me or our organization. I'm talking about we, the people. We are the news. So, folks, we're going to have maybe a little bit more of an extended broadcast because I have a little bit more news for all of you in Canada at the end of the broadcast that we're going to have now. But I want to introduce to you a real, I tell you, a real hero as far as I'm concerned, who stood up for what he believed in. And Chris Furtado, thank you for joining us.
Hey, how are you?
Chris, I tell you, you're the most humblest, nicest guy that I've ever run into. And I've got to tell you, I'm just even more so stunned that the police treated you the way they did. So without me going over it again, I'd like you to begin, and we'll talk a little bit. So let's begin at the time that you showed up as a individual who was protesting on behalf of protecting your freedoms and your liberties. Let's start at that point.
Oh, well, I was there pretty much every day. I obviously had to go to work and that during the day, but I tried to spend as much time there at the protest that I could, just to show my support, obviously, because numbers do matter, right? So as the days went on, access to the area was blocked off using cement barriers and emergency vehicles and stuff like that. So the last 2 days, I actually stayed there. I went after work. And on Friday, and I stayed there the night, and then the night again on Saturday, and then that brings us into Sunday morning when the incident happened there with the police. So basically, we woke up in the morning and we could see a heavy police presence coming down the road ahead of us, and there was already a line of police behind us with the barricades. So I just basically waited for them to approach the vehicle and direct me onto what they wanted me to do next. And as you can tell in the video, they approached my vehicle, said, "Good morning, sir." I said, "Good morning," and said, "Are you willing to leave?" I said, "Sure." And then he wanted me to drive backwards and reverse and then drive off of a side street, which they were all blocked off with cement barriers, as I mentioned. So I just informed him that that wouldn't be possible. I wouldn't be able to drive out that way. I would have to go forward the way that they came from. He walked away from my window. He verified that those two exits were in fact blocked, and then the situation basically escalated from there.
Chris, what was very disturbing to me, well, first of all, your compliance to the police order was excellent. We encourage people all over this country, they get into trouble when they don't comply with the police, but you did, and videos don't lie. The
Right.
officer seemed to have been nice to you. You were nice to him. But what was troubling in that video, and I'd like you to share with the audience here how you felt about this, and then I'll weigh in on it. As you're talking to the officer who's having this conversation with you through your side window, another officer approaches the front of your truck and aims a weapon at you. And I heard what you said. All you did was ask what that weapon is doing, pointed at you, and he said, "Don't worry, rubber bullets." What was your reaction inside? I know what your reaction outside was. You were still a calm guy, but how'd you feel inside?
I'm naturally a very confrontational person. So when I'm faced with a high stress situation like that, I like to just face it head on, basically. So obviously I saw a weapon pointed over his shoulder from behind and aimed directly at my face, and I was like taken aback because why? First of all, I'm not a threat, so why are you pointing a weapon at me to begin with? And second of all, why are you pointing it at my face? It was like just really strange to me. So, I mean, obviously I stayed calm, and I didn't think that he was going to actually discharge a weapon, but it was a little bit of a stressful situation for sure. You could tell that that particular officer was aggressive as they were reaching my vehicle, because there was another gentleman that walked up to his van. If you look earlier in the video, and you can see him draw his weapon and target that person as well. He was just eager to point it at someone, I think,
You're right, Chris. You sometimes think, well, the guy's never going to shoot. Unfortunately, accidents happen, and that's
Sure.
how innocent people end up dying. Look, I've weighed in on that particular part of the incident. To begin with, so you all know, folks, and I spent 38 years in law enforcement. Number one, a police officer who points his weapon at an individual who is peacefully protesting is a police officer that should not be wearing a badge. This officer, and this is me talking, not Chris, all right? So let's get that straight, Mr. Trudeau and your guys and gals who are probably watching. That officer should be, if not fired, suspended, should go through retraining, and he owes Chris an apology. Now, I've got to tell you something, folks. I will defend the police to the hill. Believe me, when they're doing their job to the best of their ability, and they're criticized for doing things that certainly need to be done, I will defend them. But I will not defend police officers who recklessly, and this was a reckless act on the part of this cop, in my view, recklessly draws a weapon on a father of children, a married guy, a family, a hard worker. That guy should be removed from the police force. God knows if down the road you're going to do that again and a bullet's going to go off. And by the way, what I'm concerned about also is his supervisors, the government officials who saw the video, Chris. I know they did. They're too cowardly to come out and make any statements about it. But I've got to tell you, you kept your cool, and I commend you for that. Now, so here you got the cop pointing a gun at you. The cop talking to you, I was a little astonished too, that he kind of laughed it off and said, "Don't worry, they're rubber bullets." Well, you get hit with a rubber bullet in the eye, or the glass is shattered, that becomes a deadly bullet, doesn't it?
Sure. It definitely does, yeah.
So now this is going on, and I don't believe, at least I didn't see the arrest on the video. I don't know if it's there or not. But tell us what happens after. Now you're telling the officer you can't move the truck. There's a problem with the barriers. So let's take it from there up to the time they actually arrest you.
So basically the next thing that happened was, like I said, he walked away from my window. He verified that I couldn't drive out that way. And then the guy with the gun yells out, "He's an agitator from yesterday." And then all of a sudden it all changed, and he told me to get out of the vehicle. And there was another officer that you can't see in the video, and he has like that tool for breaking windows. So he's got that thing kind of like basically next to my head, right next to the window, and he's saying, "Open your door, I'm going to smash your window." So at that point, we just ended the video. I got out and they arrested me, and that's about it.
If that officer who pointed the gun at you is watching, I have reason to believe he may be, as well as some of the officers from his police precinct, if you will, I want to share something with you guys. We work hard worldwide in this profession to maintain integrity, to maintain honor and dignity, to let the people know that we're there to protect and to serve. Now, look, we all make mistakes. I did when I was on the job. But I'm going to give that officer and his supervisors a word of advice. And some of you all who are in Canada law enforcement to understand that, there's a blue wall. I know there's a blue wall of silence. Cops don't want to talk to other cops about the bad things they do. But I want you to think about something. This officer, if you're listening, look, nobody wants to crush you. I mean, Chris can condemn you to no end. He's not doing that. He's just explaining what happened. You need help, my friend. You need some training. You need some health. Maybe some sensitivity training, maybe mental health training. I don't know, but you need help. And the fact of the matter is that what you did was not just seen by Chris and others in Canada, but the entire planet. And I've talked to police officers all over this country, and I've got to tell you that they all agree that that was an inappropriate action that you took against Chris. Now, for the supervisors, if you're willing to lose your pensions, if you're willing to maybe even go to jail if criminal charges would be brought against you, then you got problems yourselves. Hey, look, I got to tell you, that would, if I wouldn't say, I'm not going to say it would never happen here in America, Chris, it has. But in fact, we're a little too lenient on violent criminals. But here's my point. If an officer in the environment we have now would do that, even in the past, at the very least, he would be brought up on charges. There would be an investigation. And nobody wants to see any cop get crucified here. We just want to make sure, and Chris, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on this because I get the sense that you may feel this way. You don't want to hurt anybody. You don't want to hurt the cop in his career. He may have a family, may have had a bad day, who knows. But we just want to make sure that maybe something like this is considered a warning sign that there is a cop out there who may have a problem. Look, get yourself straightened out and then go back out on the streets and do your thing. But I would like to know, and Chris, maybe your lawyer will be looking into this, and I want to talk about him in a minute.
He's watching right now, actually.
Oh, great. I would hope, Mr. Lawyer, I would hope that you would, and I'm sure you're a smart guy and you probably thought about this, is to subpoena this officer's training record, any complaints against him, anything like that. Because if there's a bad cop who acts like that in a nonviolent situation, I could imagine how people like Chris and others feel if they went out and protested with the possibility of their lives being taken senselessly, uselessly. Now, Chris, you have a lawyer, and I'm sure he's giving you some great advice. So do you know what road he's going down? Are you suing anybody? And if you can't answer questions, I understand. But where do you go from here?
We're just going to focus on defense at this point. I'm not going to go on the offense and worry about suing anybody right now. I'm worried about just clearing the air and getting things thrown out as they should be. And then we'll move on from there.
Well, you talk about a gentleman. Now, as far as I'm going to bring this up, and I'm just thinking out loud. Lawyers cost money. I'm sure it's costing you something. I know that the government there, probably the last government that I know did what your government doing it is President Xi in China. Maybe the Soviet Kremlin leaders did this, seized people's bank accounts and money. I'm trying to find a way, and I'd like to talk to your lawyer about this maybe during the week, where we could help raise money for you here and then get it to your attorney. I want to make sure we do it legally, that it's within the framework of the law, because your government cannot seize our accounts. They can't seize U.S. accounts. So I'm going to try to find a way, and your lawyer would probably know how to do that, because I know these things are costly. And hopefully, if you go down the road and things are thrown out and they find that there was something illegal in the actions of the officer, criminal in the actions of the officers, obviously unethical in my view, maybe they'll have to pay the weight on this for you. You're a family guy, and in fact, before we went on the air, I envied you because I know your wife was cooking and the kids were ready to eat. And I'm saying to myself, here's Chris coming on the air, talking to people, by the way, in South Africa, in Switzerland, in Germany, in Britain, in Ireland, in Iceland, in the United States. I mean, people all over the world have been touched by the way you handled yourself. And I'm going to tell you something else, Chris. I know this is a fact. There were some parents in America who saw the video, and they actually replayed that video for their children and said, if you're ever stopped by the police, this is what you should do. Think about that. Think about the lesson learned, a real life lesson learned that you gave to young people and their parents around the world. So Chris, that's it. Do you have anything else you'd like to add and say before I move on?
Well, I appreciate you, recognizing my effort there, and I hope that it helps whoever in the future, if they're in that situation, to know how to respond. Obviously I could have been more aggressive, or maybe even a little less aggressive, but I think I handled myself assertively, but still within my rights. So,
and so does millions of people around the world. You gave so much credit to your country. It's an amazing thing. Our government leaders are supposed to bring honor and dignity to our nations. And in this case, Justin Trudeau has given nothing but disdain. He's tarnished the image of his government, not his country, because it's people like you, Chris, who upheld the honor and dignity of Canada. Chris, thank you so much. Please thank your wife and family for holding up dinner so you could come on. And your lawyer, my hat's off to you, sir, or man or woman, your lawyer.
George Carries a man. Oh. George Carries-Akos is his name.
Okay. George, I just want to thank you for standing up and working with Chris through this. And we'll make a connection sometime during the week. I want to talk to you about if Chris needs any funding, how we can get it to him. It's certainly my honor to meet you. I thank God every day for giving me the opportunity to meet men like you who are willing to stand up for freedom and liberty. I salute you, Chris. Thank you so much.
Likewise, sir. Thank you as well. Have a good night.
Good night. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Not just a hero from Canada, but a hero in my estimation from Canada who's impacted the world. So it's just great to have a gentleman like him on, and God bless him, his attorney, and his family. Now, let's talk about a couple of things. I still have Chris on air here. There we go. I'm going to see if we could get Chris off of here. Let's see here. Here we go. All right. Let's see here. All right, folks. There we go. All right. So now a couple of things I want to share with you in Canada that's very important. If your media has been keeping things away from you, don't worry about it because we're going to get it to you. Now, there has been a situation in Canada where Trudeau to me, has embraced the Marxist, Leninist, Stalinist, communist agenda. That's my view, my opinion. And Mr. Trudeau, if you don't like to hear it, too bad. I'm in America where we're still free. And by the way, we're getting rid of our tyrant soon. In November of 24, our tyrant is going to be thrown right out of the White House. And in 22, the United States Congress, that is the Congress, the Senate, the people are taking complete control of the government. And we're going to get it back where it belongs, and that is under the flag of freedom and liberty. And I got news for you, Mr. Trudeau. The people of Canada are going to do the same with you. They're going to show you the door when they have the opportunity, and the liberals and anybody who's supporting your agenda, they're going to show you the door. I believe that's going to happen because it always happens to tyrants. I've said that over and over again. Mussolini, is he still around? Did he last? Did Hitler last? Did the pharaohs in Egypt last in Old Testament days? I mean, I could go on and on and on. Tyrants don't last. They come and they go. But you know who lasts forever? Freedom-loving people. People who fight for freedom and fight for liberty. And they do it these days in this 21st century within the framework of the law. And I know that gets you. I know you don't like to hear that, but that is how it's done. The United States of America has a people's convoy, a freedom convoy on their way to Washington, D.C. So here's why I bring that up, folks. Think about this. So you have Biden and Pelosi and the Democrats here who have done more damage to America in my lifetime than anybody in any government that I know in the history of my lifetime. So here's their response to our freedom convoy. They've got police, they've got barbed wire, they got walls going up, they've got military personnel going. I mean, they've got all kinds of people there that represent the government to do what? My question to Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and the Democrats across this country is, why weren't these instruments of power brought to Seattle when violent protesters took over that city, literally took over the city? Why weren't these instruments of power brought to Minneapolis when neighborhoods were overrun, business was being burned? In fact, a police department was burned to the ground. In fact, to the mayor of Washington, D.C., Mayor Lightfoot, I have a question for you. Every day, every week, we're hearing about people being gunned down in your streets, mugged, robbed, whatever. Why aren't these instruments of power being brought to your city? So you have violence all over the place. And I'll guarantee, folks, all those military National Guardsmen in Washington, the barbed wire defenses and all these kind of defensive mechanisms, as all this is going on with peaceful truckers driving their convoy past the Capitol, expressing their support for freedom and liberty, at that same time, Believe me, I actually believe this is going to happen. At that same time, just a mile or so from the Capitol, people are going to be beaten, shot, robbed, whatever they do normally in Washington, D.C., that's what will happen. Because that's Washington, D.C. And it'll have nothing to do with the protest. Nothing to do with that. I bring that up because it's an everyday occurrence in Washington, like Chicago and other cities around America. So if you're going to use force, use it on violent criminals, not on truck drivers who are fighting for peace and liberty. Now, here's some news for you over there in Canada. Think about this one. Many emails we've gotten from Canadians regarding a pastor or two that have been arrested. One particular pastor has been arrested after he was at the Freedom Convoy on the U.S.-Canada border, praying and sharing from God's word, what people need to do in cases like this. An assault on freedom of speech is one thing. An assault on freedom of assembly is another thing. But an assault on freedom of worship and religion, that is a whole new level. And the reason why I say, folks, that is a whole new level, it reveals to me and others who know about the Communist Party that one of the objectives of a communist agenda is to destroy the religious beliefs, the spiritual beliefs in the hearts and souls and spirits of the freedom-loving people. Because if you, as an American citizen, as a Canadian citizen, as a citizen from anywhere on earth, maintain a strong spiritual connection with God Almighty, the communists know that is nearly impossible to break you. Because although there is no hope in man, there is no hope in the Biden administration here in America. There is no hope in the Trudeau administration there in Canada. There is no hope in just about any administration that embraces a communist agenda. And although they advance policies and an agenda that is out to destroy freedom and liberty in their country, they cannot destroy the spirit that one has and the connection that one has with an awesome, powerful God. And believe me, I do not say that lightly, because payday is coming for these tyrants, one way or another. If not by the people in the nations who are working within the framework of the law, that penalty that they will pay, that justice that will be served, will be much more powerful and much stronger than what any human being on the earth could dish out, because it's coming from on high. It's coming from the great Supreme Court justice of the world, of the universe, if you will. It is going to come from God. Always has, and it always will. But here's some good news, as I said I would share with all of you before I leave tonight. Senator Josh Hawley, a Republican, of course, from Montana, he reiterated his call for Canada to be placed on a special watch list of religious liberty violators as the country continues to imprison a Christian pastor who addressed the Freedom Convoy on the U.S.-Canada border earlier this month. In other words, he's looking for, and we are going to support, that Canada, the Canadian government under Trudeau, is placed on a religious liberty violator watch list, meaning that we see now things are getting so out of hand in Canada that we're going to have to put the Canadian government on a watch list because they, in our view, are violating the religious liberties of a free people. Now, also, folks, I think we should be doing a lot more watching here in America on that northern border. I know we're watching the southern border, but I'll tell you what, I know we're watching what's going on in Ukraine and Russia, and I'll get into that next Monday night. But we really need to watch another a very clear and present danger to the United States. And that's just north of us in Canada, not the people. You know, we're talking about sending troops all over the world. Now, I don't suggest we send troops to Canada. My goodness, we don't have to do that. But what we can do is take actions against the Canadian government that'll force them to get their country back on the direction of freedom and liberty. There are things we could do within the framework of the law, and I think we ought to do it. The problem is you got to find ways to do it so it doesn't hurt the people in Canada. But what we can do, again, I always emphasize within the framework of the law, is continue to let the Canadian people, we in America, support them. Those of you around the world support them. Keep on sending your emails. I'm sharing with them on the air. Send these videos around, folks. People are encouraged. They're encouraged because they're not hearing empty words or empty promises. You're hearing from grassroots America through me. And I'm not the only one. There are thousands of Americans who are standing up for the Canadian people. You're our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors. You fight well, you fight strong. And look at you, the fighter you saw tonight, Chris, right? What a fighter, right? And we're so proud of him. And we're proud of the Canadian people. I wanted to share that with you regarding this senator in the United States. And we got a few others who are going to be introducing legislation that will perhaps put Canada on a watch list. I'll tell you right now, I think Trudeau should be put on a watch list, in my view. And still in America there, Mr. Prime Minister, we can express our views. In my view, I think you got a problem. I really do. I think you're on a power trip. You got an ego trip. You've got a real serious problem. And you need to go see somebody to get help. Because when you go so far as you did with regard to an executive order, like what we would have in our country, and declare martial law, you scared the living daylights out of men, women, and children in your country. And if you don't believe that, I challenge the Canadian press. You guys are watching. I know you're watching. You know, your Canadian press in America, we don't have journalism anymore. We really don't. It's all opinionated. It's a garbage. That's what it is. So that's why the ratings on a lot of these news feeds are going down. But for the Canadian press, I'd like you to call me. I'd like you to give me an opportunity to come on the air. I'll read some of the emails to you right on the air. I'm not going to reveal names, but I'll read them to you. I'll show them to you. You want to see how frightened your people are? You want to see how frightened Canadians are? They're frightened that they're going to go down a road where their children and grandchildren are not going to see that maple leaf on a flag anymore. Like our children in this country are frightened that they're not going to see this flag anymore, but that they're going to see a red flag with a hammer and sickle on it. Now, you can say I'm exaggerating. I'm not. I never do, because I have the proof. But you're going to not want the proof. You don't want the truth, because I would not have to say this if you wanted the truth. So, Mr. Trudeau, you made a name for yourself, not only here in America, but around the world. And maybe there's no watch list where you can put you on, but I've got you on a list with Mussolini, a list with Hitler, a list with Pharaoh of Egypt back in the Old Testament days, on a list of President Xi, got you on that list, and a whole bunch of other tyrants around the world, because that's what you are. And I don't call names, folks. You know that. I don't call people names. This isn't a name. This is identifying somebody for what he is, in my view. And those of you in his government who support this, shame on you. I don't know how you're going to, or what you're going to explain to your children and grandchildren when they move on and live a life in Canada and here in America, by the way, and open up their history books and ask you, hey, Dad, Mom, Grandpa, Grandma, what did you do? What did you do when the Trudeau government, what did you do in America when the Biden government made moves to take my freedom away, to take my wonderful, beautiful Canadian flag away, my wonderful, beautiful American flag away? What did you do? And I wonder, those of you who support the communist agendas of these administrations, I really wonder, what are you going to tell your children and your grandchildren? I know what I'm going to tell them. I know what Chris is going to tell them, and other freedom-loving people are going to tell them. They're going to tell them, we did the best we could in our day so that you could enjoy living in a country where the maple leaf still flies with pride and honor, where stars and stripes still flies with pride and honor. We did our duty. We did our duty to the best of our ability. And the neat thing about it is, son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter, the neat thing about it is you're here today talking about it with me because we won and they lost. Indeed, we will win. Until next Monday night, 7:00 p.m. here at the Patriot Desk. See you then. Folks, send your emails, your texts, whatever you want. Look, campaign4america.com. Campaign4america.com. That's our website. We urge you to go to our website, go to the contact information bar, email us. Just your email. We need it. We want it for this reason. If we get shut down somehow, we'll have your email. We'll send videos of our broadcast directly to you. That they can't stop. All right. Thanks a lot, folks. God bless you. God bless every freedom-loving person on the face of this great earth. Remember, freedom is not a privilege from government. It is a gift from God. A gift. No government will ever be able to take away, no matter how hard they try. We are freedom-loving people because the freedom and liberty we're given is from God Almighty. Thank you, and God bless you all. Have a great evening.